There we go. I will be recording these sessions, and typically I will post the lectures, the ones that are specifically aimed around the topics or countries that we'll be covering. I usually do post those afterwards. I encourage you to not use that as the only class attendance that you have. I do still encourage you to log in to our class sessions, because this is really, I think, when we'll be able to cover the things the best, and then everything will be tied in very strongly with your discussion sections, which will be happening on Fridays. Those start in September after we've had a chance to get everything kind of lined up here, and everything going with our course outline. So today we will mostly be talking about that. I often have a PowerPoint for you, just so you don't have to stare at my face quite the entire time, which is something people tend to appreciate. Today's PowerPoint will be nice and short. Obviously, these will be a little bit more involved once we get going. But first of all, welcome. And I hope that everyone is looking forward to this class. There are a couple of core components that I think it's important to talk about here on this first day. And those are things that you will find in the syllabus. Hopefully everyone has had a chance at least to click through enough of the class to get to see the syllabus, the module layout, kind of how the class is structured. We will take a look at our WIO course a little bit later, just in case that is the first time that you're really seeing it. But out of the syllabus, there are a couple of important things to talk about. The first of them is the textbook. So as of the start of this semester, they let me know that there's a second edition of this textbook, and just got everything set up for the online inclusive access to this second edition of the textbook. That being said, if you had already purchased the first edition of this textbook, which is the one here on the left, the white cover, if you've purchased that, that should be more than fine for this class. Moving forward, we'll be shifting into the second edition of the textbook. It has a little bit more updated information by just a couple of years. And there's not a huge ton of difference as far as structure or layout or what you'll be accessing in the book for me to say, okay, everyone has to go out and, have a bonfire of their first editions. You all have to have the second edition ready to go. If you have the first edition, just fine. Probably don't need to opt into the inclusive access. If you want to, you are also welcome to, because we did get the course set up with inclusive access to the second edition of this text. I say all of that with the caveat that I am still waiting for my copy of the second edition of this text. So I can't guarantee you that everything in it is the same. If you come across, if you're working out of the online edition of it, and you come across something that seems vastly different, by all means, talk to me about it. I say that because, thinking back to a couple of years ago when, just using one edition of this textbook, I had a question on one of my quizzes about social media in Iran, and how the Iranian government had up to that point been fairly, liberal in allowing the access to social media that you wouldn't necessarily expect in a predominantly theocratic country. And then like a week after class ended, the Iranian government announced that it was going to be banning Facebook and Twitter. And so like a week after the class ended, one of these questions that I had already become irrelevant, was already no longer true. So things do change. There may be some little things like that in these texts. And that's a good place to put the caveat as well. When we're talking about the quizzes in this class, the quizzes are not perfect. This is political science. We often have the most right answer. And then there's also a like, that could be right as well type of answer. and I think will attest to this as well, that's something you come across fairly frequently in political science. So if you are doing one of the quizzes, you get a question wrong and you really feel that you were correct on it, just shoot me an email with your explanation of that. I'm always happy to revisit the quizzes in this class, revisit any of the questions that you've answered. And if I agree, if I feel that you logicked out your answer fairly well and should get points for that, I'll often add points to the quizzes on that. So that's a good transition into what you will be doing for this course. There are 6 primary things that you'll be doing. The first section, as you can see on here, is the majority of the course grade. It consists of a few different ongoing projects that you'll be working on. And then the latter half is building into a comparative paper. So looking through each of these specifically, there will be 10 weeks where you will submit a reading question. So these are, and as is specified in the syllabus and in the assignment page, this is any kind of question that you have out of the reading, something where the book didn't get specific enough, that you had further questions on how something works. If you had a question on if something is still the way it is, or if there are changes in a country's politics that may affect something that you're seeing. If you in your head are tying in this material to something else that you're studying, maybe another class, maybe something that you've just read about in the news, any of those kinds of things where it's a question that we can have further discussion on, that is a perfect thing to submit for your reading question. So you'll see those will come up because they are tied in to our discussions. Reading questions will be due on Wednesday evenings. So I think it's by midnight on Wednesday. And then once we start our discussion sections, which will be on Fridays, those discussion sections will be based around some of the reading questions that are submitted in that reading question section. So essentially, Will and I will look through those questions, pick out some of the ones that we think are good for further discussion, and then use those for those Friday discussion sections to be able to just delve into this material a little bit deeper. This class does tend to be an overview course. It is an introductory course. When you look at the schedule and you see that we have 1 week that we'll spend discussing Russia, obviously we can't cover all of Russia in 1 week, even just the governmental structure of Russia. So in that way, we do have a very broad overview of these kinds of things. Each week that we have could essentially be a class unto itself. But we take this very broad approach, and then we have these discussion sections on Fridays that will allow us to delve deeper into that and start to kind of engage with that material on that little bit deeper level. So I do expect the readings that are listed each week for you to read those in advance of that week so that you have an idea of what you want your reading question to be. You have something to bring in so that my lectures, anything in this class, is not going to just be reviewing what the textbook says. It's going to be taking that and trying to go a little bit deeper with it, trying to talk about how it functions in the real world. So together, those reading questions and the discussion participation are going to constitute a total of 400 points out of 1,000, so 40% of your overall grade. And then another 40% will come from those quizzes. So these are at the end of each of the module sections. It is not comprehensive. A few years ago, I did away with the whole structure of doing a midterm and a final because I found that these were more accessible and students liked them a lot more than having to bank all the information and then regurgitate it in class on a big exam. So these are functionally reading quizzes. They are open note, they are open book. You have a a long period of time to do them. I believe that they open on Monday and close on Friday, so you have 4 total days to do these quizzes. So they are meant to be accessible. They are not meant to be something that you stress about. That being said, if you don't do any of the reading and you get to that week where there's a quiz over 3 or 4 chapters of the text, that's going to suddenly be very stressful, because the quizzes are also not, simple questions of, it's not going to be something like, what is Iran's parliament called? It's going to be a little bit deeper information, a little bit more of like, how does that interaction work between these different facets? Hopefully something that will require you to think about the stuff that you have read. So I do encourage you to keep up with reading. It'll also help the whole course make a lot more sense overall. And then the latter half of these assignments build into one another. You'll be analyzing 2 countries in papers that are due about a month apart, I think I have in the syllabus. And in each of those, you're just going to be picking one central aspect of it, something like, economic development, something like their governmental system, something like current issues in this country. You'll pick one topic and you'll examine one country in terms of that topic. And then for the second paper, you'll choose a different country and examine that same topic in the context of that country. Now, that it is intended to build into your final comparative paper. The final paper for this class is going to be probably approximately 8 to 10 pages by the time you're done with it, but it incorporates both of those first 2 papers that you have written. So those 2 papers are not, to be written just for the fun of it. You're essentially writing this one large paper over the course of the entire semester. And that gives us the ability to have a little bit of back and forth with feedback on those initial papers and ways to improve them, what you can focus on to make sure that you're building towards this overall comparative paper that by the end of the course is going to be fairly significant and also fairly in-depth. You'll have 2 countries well analyzed on a single subject, and you'll set those next to each other and compare them. Talk about the similarities and the differences. I have listed suggested countries just based on what's available in the textbook, just because I think that's a nice place to be able to start. So you'll see in each of these assignments, and we'll look at this, in a minute. You'll see a list of possible countries that you can use. Those are just, if you want the information laid out for you, you only have, a couple of other resources that you need to pull in. You'll be able to write that, in a fairly straightforward fashion. However, if there is a country that's not on that list that you really want to examine, talk to me before that first paper is due. Because I'm happy to expand this out. And I've had many students in the past who will pick other countries not on that list and do fantastic jobs at examining the same core topic in terms of another country that they are personally interested in. I think that's one of the nice things about this kind of course is that we cover so many different areas of government and governments in different parts of the world that there is some, personalization, I think, for what we can study, and giving you opportunities to pull in what you're interested in, not just, what is already laid out in the content of the course. So before I move on, any questions on the textbook and or the overall layout of assignments for the course?
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just have if you could clarify, you said you want us to do the reading the week before we're on the topic?
In advance of.
In advance?
So, the weekend before, to Monday morning before class starts, really before Wednesday, as we'll be wrapping up our discussion and then we'll be wrapping up the lectures on Monday and Wednesday. We'll have that reading question due on Wednesday. So, functionally, having those chapters read by the Wednesday that we're discussing them. But I think if you have them read by Monday, it'll make things make a lot more sense. Because like I said, I don't tend to lecture and just repeat what you can read in the textbook. I don't know that would be terribly interesting for anyone. I don't like my voice that much to want to just hear me read the textbook. So I'd rather have that chance to delve into the stuff a little bit deeper. And that's really helped by having the textbook read prior to our discussion in class. It'll really be essential to have that background before those discussion sections, because that's where we'll have the smaller groups on Fridays that will be able to really delve into the information for the course. Great question. Any other questions that popped into your head right as we were going over that?
So is the textbook online, or is it something we can buy? Okay, so it's all online and we buy it online. It's an online textbook, or?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Like I said, we had a little bit of a late adoption when it came to the inclusive access this year. So, and that serves just, I'll pull this up here to give you one more view. Allegedly, because I clicked the student view, this should look something like your class looks when you log in. I have added here, if you choose to opt into the inclusive access, you'll be able to see a link here, and it's for our ebook. So this will take you to our class. This might require me to log in. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So you can, if you opt into inclusive access, which is just the electronic version of the book, you can access that here. So you'll see this has all of the chapters, the countries that we will be covering, the countries that we won't be covering, but are a good starting place for that comparative analysis paper. All of that, though, is essentially structured here in an online version. So you can do that if you like to read online, if you want to do inclusive access. One of the benefits I know of inclusive access is that you don't have to wait for a textbook to arrive. That's one of the reasons that I've tried to incorporate inclusive access into more of my classes. It's just because I know students always used to get annoyed that, like, oh, I ordered my textbook 2 weeks ago and it's not arriving until the middle of September. What am I supposed to do to get the chapters until then? So this gives you just instant access to the book. Now, if you prefer, like I said, if you've already purchased the first edition of this book, because that was, when I was writing the syllabus and everything, that's where I started was, you basically would purchase that first edition of this book. If you have already done that, please don't make a big deal of, going out and trying to return it, or trying to switch over to this. The first version of this book should serve you just fine for this course. I don't think it'll put anyone behind in anything that we'll be covering. Anything that has changed we'll be able to talk about in class, and maybe even in the discussion sections, if there are significant changes over the past. I think the original book was published in like 2016 maybe, and this was 2020, so it's about maybe a 4-year difference, so not a huge difference between the texts. But yes, if you prefer physical copy, if you already have that, use that. You do have this electronic digital version as well that is an option for you. Good question. Other questions of the overall kind of course content?
Is there like a registration code for this book or no?
There shouldn't be.
Okay, cool.
You should be able to click on that link through the modules and just access it. I hope. If that isn't working, email me, we'll figure it out.
Okay, when do you need the book like purchased by? Because my other class is doing the exact same thing and it doesn't work either.
Oh, good. Yeah, like honestly, I have no idea what's happening this semester. I've used inclusive access in the past and never had these kind of challenges. And this year, all of a sudden, like all of my classes have some kind of inclusive access issues. If you come into the syllabus and scroll through, we will start next week. So week 2, the 29th through the 2nd, we will be starting with the introduction and states chapters. And then week 3 is when the first quiz is up and running. So by then would probably be the time that you really need that textbook. That being said, if you click, like I have been assured that link in the modules works as of today. I was just emailing with my with the book provider, the WW Norton rep. I was just emailing with her earlier, and she said it's all up and available. So if you can't access it through that, let me know. We'll get that sorted. If you have done the inclusive access thing and not opt out of that. And it looks like one person said that the link works for them in the chat.
I also have a question. So I got an email about it this morning and I looked, and because it's listed at POLS 1250-21 and POLS 1250-80, there's like, it's listed twice. And so I'm opted in twice. Is it going to charge me twice for being opted in twice?
I sure hope not.
Because it's like I can opt out of one section, but is it going to opt out of both sections? Because it's I'm just like
I would opt
$40. I don't want like $80.
Sure.
Yeah,
no, totally. Yeah, I would opt out of the 21 section.
Okay.
Just in case, because the 21 section is one of the discussion sections.
Right.
So the main 80 section should be where this is applicable. So just to cover you not getting charged twice, I would opt out of that 21 section and just maintain the 80 section for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Good thing to note as well. I know, like I said, I do appreciate those of you who are willing to have cameras on for this. I do understand that some people choose not to, or are working on getting cameras. I know technology is a whole pain in and of itself. So if you do not want to jump on when I ask questions or open it up for questions, and you would rather do that in the chat, feel free to do so. We will both be here and both be monitoring the chat as best we can. And so it's a good chance to be able to engage with that. That being said, please keep the chat to course content. Not the chat in our Zoom is not really the place for snide comments or other things that aren't related to the class. So try to keep that out of the chat and keep the chat just pertinent to what we are discussing. I just realized that I do this a lot. I don't like talking about myself, so I very rarely actually introduce myself. And I realize I probably should do that because it is our first day of class. And it'll also be a good chance for our GA, Will, to introduce himself as well, because I want him to be here as a resource for you to go to. So I'm Zachary Taylor. I'm the instructor for this course. I've been teaching both online and in person on and off for going on 6 years now. So it's been a little while. I teach a variety of classes. This is one of my favorite classes to teach because I think that comparative government is just a fascinating sector of political science to be able to discuss. It gives us a chance to talk about a whole bunch of different countries instead of just the United States, though we will use the United States as a point of reference and a point of comparison as we're talking about these different things. Let's see, I have had a lot going on this summer. I just got married and adopted my son, so it's been a very busy couple of weeks, or I guess month now that those things have happened. But I'm very excited about those things. So it's been a pretty wonderful summer. I also like, if you're curious about anything about me, I'm always happy to talk. I've had some very interesting experiences around the world in some of these countries that we'll be discussing. At some point, I'm sure I will tell the story of how I got deported from the Netherlands for reasons. It's a whole thing. So I'm sure I'll tell that story at some point in this class, but yeah, I just enjoy this stuff. And I honestly do enjoy being able to teach online. I know it's not quite the same as, being in a classroom, and it's not quite that same ability to engage. But I think with the way that we structure this class, it gives us a little bit of that back. It gives us the chance to both have these large lecture sections as well as the more personal discussion side where we will really be able to delve into this material. Anyway, that's me. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name's Will and I'm going to be your GA. This is my 5th year at UW and I'm a master's student, first year master's student, mostly studying education, public education, differences between white and Black communities in public education. But yeah, I took this class in fall 2019, I believe. And so I'm here for you guys, and here my email is in the syllabus. You can reach out to me with any questions you have, and throughout the semester, I'll be leading discussions as well. And then throughout the semester, when the time comes, we'll talk about potential like SI sessions or extra help and going into the comparative papers and any other big assignments in the class. So yeah, I'm excited. This is a really interesting class, and I think it really helps develop our worldviews. And like Professor Taylor said, it's a pretty broad material, but as the semester goes on and you learn more about different states and different types of governments, it gives the chances for the discussions to be really, really interesting by the end of the semester.
Excellent. Any questions for Will or I? Or additional things that have popped up in your mind about our course layout?
I may just be stupid, but is our discussion also through Zoom or is it in person?
Discussion section, and no, that is not stupid. Discussion section will also be through Zoom.
Okay.
We will have, it's marked in the syllabus right now as it'll be a separate syllabus that we'll write for the discussion section itself. So it'll be just a little bit different as far as how it's evaluated, and it'll probably be on a different Zoom link. But yes, that will be through Zoom as well. We'll have all of that published well in advance of those discussion sections starting in September. But there'll be smaller groups. It'll be just about half of the total number of people that we have here in our large kind of lecture discussion. So I did get a question in the chat for what is the attendance policy for the class besides the Friday discussions. I encourage you strongly. I think the class is a lot better when you attend the lecture sessions regularly. That being said, I will not be taking attendance or grading attendance for the Monday and Wednesday sessions. That will be different for the Friday discussions. So by all means, you will want to attend those regularly. But for the Monday and Wednesday sessions, I will not be taking attendance. So you are not graded on that. That gives you that little bit of flexibility. Like I said, I think that it does make the course a lot better if you attend these regularly. And if you need to miss one, like I said, I do try to post these as long as I remember to record them. I do try to post these to our course website afterwards. So in the case that you need to miss one for, a family emergency, a doctor's appointment, something like that, where you would normally have to miss class, then you can still access that and still get the material from our course session. So yeah, I would strongly encourage you to come to class, but it is not a required attendance on these Monday and Wednesday sections.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Might have already mentioned it, or it might be in the syllabus, but do you have like a Zoom parallel to office hours? So if
Yes.
I'm struggling with an essay and want to talk to you instead of just email, do you have something like that?
Sure. Oh, I thought I had that in the syllabus. Thank you for reminding me. I will add that to the syllabus. Yes, I will be having virtual office hours, so open hours, probably 10 to 1 on Wednesdays. So before this class on Wednesdays, I'll just have an open session. And then I'm also happy to do one-on-one Zoom appointments. If you just email me and say, hey, can we find a time to chat? I will schedule one-on-one appointments with you to chat about anything that you would like specifically. So the open hours, if you just want to drop by with something, simple, but if you want to talk a little bit longer than that, by all means, just email me. And I would imagine that may be the same for Will, that if you email Will and ask for a chat, either of us will be happy to meet with you, especially when it comes to those papers. I do not have the ability to read everyone's paper in advance of them being submitted. But if you have some specific questions you want to talk through, how you're approaching the paper, what you're looking at, what kind of resources you're coming across, those are things that I'm absolutely happy to discuss with you.
Yeah, for me, I don't have set office hours right now. I'm still kind of working out. I'm still taking classes also and figuring out my schedule right now. So if I do set something up, I'll let you guys know for sure by email, but absolutely by appointment. I'm available by Zoom, and Professor Taylor and I have different schedules. So if you even just want to CC, if you need an appointment Zoom, just CC me or something, and we can definitely work it out between one of the two of us.
Yeah, and that's good. Additional reminder, make sure to keep an eye on the announcements in the course. As far as broad communication, that's probably the main place that you will get it from for this class. I know that you can set in your account to receive emails. I think it's automatically turned on, but if you've turned it off, you can receive emails whenever there's an announcement put out in any of your courses. And so I would encourage you to add that, just because announcements are one of the ways that if anything comes up, if there's sudden change, like the reminder announcement of, that we didn't have class on Monday, that we were starting on this Wednesday, any of those kind of things, I try to send out in, the announcements so that they're readily available on the class. I'll also say that I think I tend to, and again, hopefully will nod when I say this, but I think I tend to be a little bit, I'm one of the more understanding faculty members of our university. Part of that is because I'm also a student as well. I'm currently in the last year of classes in my PhD. So I am also doing this whole Zoom student remote thing as a student. So with that, talk to me. I think I have a somewhat stiff late policy in the syllabus. And that's just because it's easier to, have a strict late policy in there. But if you talk to me with, a good reason, I'm usually pretty open to alternative ideas, whether that be like, I need the weekend to work on my country one analysis paper. So having it due on Friday is just a pain in the butt. Would you mind letting me turn it in by Sunday? That's something that I'm almost universally going to be okay with, because sometimes those 2 days can just take what would otherwise be a very hectic week and turn it into not as much pressure on you as a student. So please talk to me. Really, I think that's the general approach. Anything that comes up, let's talk about it in advance, because it's much easier to solve it in advance rather than trying to solve it after the semester has ended and you forgot to do all 5 of the quizzes that exist in the class, that kind of thing. All right. Any wrap up questions for today? Are we able to record lectures for our own study purposes? Yeah. If you want to independently record, like I said, I will do my best to record these and post them so that you'll have access to all of those. Sometimes that can take a couple of days for me to go and do it. But yeah, if you do want to independently record the lectures, you are welcome to do that as well. Please, if you do so, only use them for study purposes, as in don't publish the lectures anywhere. They'll be on an unlisted YouTube channel for your access in class. So, great question. Yeah. Last thing then, as you work through this class, please use both Will and I as resources. We are, like I said, we are both students. We've had experience with these things as well. So whether it is, just how to do well on the quizzes in this class, how best to study this field, which tends to be a field that most of the students won't have a lot of previous experience with, being comparative politics. It's kind of a specific subfield of political science. Anything like that, chat with us. We are happy to help, and we are both here to make sure that you have a successful semester above all else, and even occasionally might have a little bit of fun with comparative politics. It can be entertaining if we can get there. So wonderful. If you have any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I will see you on Monday when we will jump into the introductory chapter and talking about states as a whole. And yeah, please read those in advance of class on Monday, and we'll see you back here on Monday at 1:10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, and Will, I'll probably just have you, in general, stick around until the end, just in case anyone has any questions for either of us. But
Yeah, for sure. And I also, do you want to meet to just discuss more about meet about discussions and whatnot, and check in on Friday potentially? Does that work for you?
let's see. I would love to set up a regular meeting time for you and I, so that like every other week maybe we can, sit down and chat. So let me take a look at the calendar.
If we're gonna do it regular meetings, actually, should we potentially do Mondays?
Okay.
Because I also, was going to bring up when we meet, I'm still on the cross country team, and so the there could be issues that we run into with that. We don't have a ton of competitions, but they are on Fridays, unfortunately, which I know is a huge conflict with discussions. And so I don't know. I was going to talk to you about that. What the game plan would be for that. If I mean, depending on our schedules, sometimes we do compete on Fridays, which is tough. I don't know if you wanted to switch around weekly schedules sometimes, or if you're still leading the discussions. Cross that bridge when we get there, talk about it even next week or something. But I
Yeah.
definitely wanted to bring that up with you just because.
Yeah, let's set to meet on Monday and
Okay.
we'll go over all of that. We'll talk through all the discussion questions that we might have. Yeah, and we'll figure all that out.
I'm sure.
What time works for you usually on Monday? Like earlier or later?
This is my only class. Anytime before this class meet, I'm open. This is my only class, and then I have practice at 3. So ideally, just before this class or anytime in the morning should be good for me.
Okay. Let's probably just say noon. Then we'll meet just before this class. I'll send you a separate Zoom invite for that.
Perfect.
All right, cool. Well,
Okay,
have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.
Yeah, you too.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks, Will. Bye.
Bye.